Faith at the Fringe, a Sanctuary First podcast series. Uncovering God in the creative arts. At the biggest international arts festival in the world, Sanctuary First stops to ask, where does faith and art meet?
And welcome to Faith at the Fringe, a Sanctuary First podcast series in which we are seeking to uncover where God can be found in the midst of the Edinburgh International Arts Festival. And today I'm joined by my co-host, Pete Sutton, who is the minister of St Cuthbert's, which is in the very centre of Edinburgh. And also we have with us a guest today, who is Nicola Anderson, who is part of the gardening team at the famous Princess Street Gardens. And I think, as you said, you're under botanical, sounded very important, botanical services.
That's right.
So welcome to this podcast, and we look forward to just exploring a wee bit with you, Nicola, what your job means and also how you got to know the parish minister. And I think we'll pass on to Pete to get that going.
Well, thanks, Albert, and it's so nice to have you with us, Nicola. And in our case, it was quite a strange encounter because it was all around, I think,
That's
my
right.
crazy dog.
Winnie. Yeah.
Winnie, all around Winnie.
Yes.
And as you know, each morning I tend to walk round the whole of the parish of St Cuthbert, which is very much a garden parish, which includes the beautiful garden that you walk in. And my take on this is, as I go round the garden, I say my prayers. At the start of the day, I pray for my loved ones, I pray for my congregation, but much more, I think the special bit is I just pray for everybody in the parish. And I've had the great privilege of bumping into you on many occasions now.
Thank you.
And it's not just a bumping in, it's actually a stopping and a chatting. And I think that's
Yes.
what makes our encounters so special. We're not rushing by,
No,
we
we're
stop and we really chat to each other. So can you remember the first time you saw me and Crazy Winnie?
Probably about a couple of months before that, and I stopped and wanted to pet her, but she was all over you and stuff like that. And a lot of dogs that I meet in the parks are a bit crazy, but I've got a few favourites called Finlay and other dogs. My friend Ben, who is a staffy, but he's not very well. He's 11 and he's got benign tumours.
Oh.
And one time he saw me at the far end of the West Gardens, and he saw my yellow jacket and he dashed. And his master tried to call him back, and he just was so really obsessed, wanting to come and get a clap. And that's one of my favourite bits of the job, is meeting all the dogs and the people and the tourists, asking questions like going to the castle, going to St Cuthbert's, seeing one of the classical things that people don't know, that Agatha Christie was married the second time around by Malwyn in St Cuthbert's. So they hadn't known about that, and the quickest way to the castle, and I really enjoy my work, and to get my hands all dirty with plants and digging, and people ask me questions about plants or what to put in the ground, and the first thing is soil sample more than what plants you should put in.
Do you know, Nick, I'm going to enjoy this podcast. I'm just looking forward to talking to you because you're such an interesting person.
Thank
One
you.
of the things that you've struck me right away is that you see the community not only with tourists and the regulars, but also the animals.
Yes.
And the animals are your friends.
Yes, the animals
and
are my
it's
friends,
almost
yes.
like you're bringing us and giving us an insight
Yeah.
into how we should be relating to the world around us.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, very much
And
so.
it's almost as though you're doing that, and I hope in this podcast you're going to help us to learn a wee bit more about the importance of that.
And I think what Albert says is so special as well, because without you, we wouldn't have a beautiful garden. So you have created and you maintain.
There's 12 of us, so I'm not just myself.
Yeah, your team.
We've got a team, and we try and do that. And we also do Lawson Castle. We also do Soweto Gardens. I love Lauriston because it's lunchtime, I can sort of go and meditate at lunchtime, overlooking right across to Cramond Island, and that's one of my. Or even fall asleep, just hear the sounds of the waves of the beach.
You were saying at the beginning when I was talking to you about one of the things you enjoy is in the morning opening up the gardens. Can you say a wee bit about that?
Well, I like opening on a Sunday. It's so quiet. There's not many people about, and the trams are not working at that specific time, so you don't have the ding, 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 or the hustle and bustle of the town or the city, and it's so surreal, quiet, and spiritual. Spiritual, I find, is I don't know, something from God that is He's sort of trying to communicate to me and just say it's going to be okay, or if you have any difficulty, just say, please help me and stuff like that. But just the noise, there's no noise, because normally during the day it's so busy and I get confused because I'm dyslexic. So when somebody comes out and shouts at me or quite aggressive, I just say, well, it's not me that being aggressive to it, it's something's wrong with them. So I try and calm down, try and calm myself, but also calm themselves down by saying, can I help you? Can you speak slowly? Can you tell me what you need?
So you go back into that quiet place.
The quiet zone.
That quiet zone where, I'm reminded as I talk to you about that lovely bit in the Psalms where it says, be still and know that I am God.
God, yes, that's right. Yeah.
So the first lesson I'm learning from you today is the importance of stillness. And I think for all of us today, from Nicola, coming in as a gardener in the midst of a very busy Edinburgh festival,
yes, that's right.
You immediately have brought us back to the most important thing as Christians we believe in is the stillness and the importance of prayer.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
And, you know, and of course, you've shared a little bit with me earlier on about your Christian journey, which is interesting. But there you are, working that out in your everyday life, in your job. And that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And I think from my own faith point of view as well, because St Cuthbert's is a garden parish, we're surrounded by this beautiful garden. I sort of see three areas of the garden. There's the Garden of Eden, the beautiful garden that you and your team are responsible for nurturing and sustaining, and you're great stewards over this beautiful part of the city. But I think, and we spoke about this too, there's also another side to the garden, and in Christ's life there was a bit of a struggle in the Garden of Gethsemane when life wasn't going too well, and you shared with me there's a bit of that in Princes Street with the homeless particularly.
Yes, very much so.
So could you just explain a wee bit about the homeless folk who live in the garden?
When I talk to them, because there's still people just walk right past them. They started to, which I really appreciate, they communicate with me. A lot of people just humbug them and just push them away like a bit of cloth. And I talk to them like normal people. They've actually started to put the rubbish in a bag. So it's easier for us to put in a black bag, because it used to be all strewed all over the benches, and now they've been putting them in bags. And says, I actually say, I really appreciate it. It makes our work less hassle. Or the homeless might have a dog for company to get them through their lives, because sometimes that's all they've got as company. And they have said, well, a lot of the homeless had jobs, they had a family, they had relationships with people, they could have been a manager, they could have been a professor or something, but they became homeless through drugs or drink or abuse of substances, and which could happen to like you and me.
And it's so special that your garden's there for them as well.
Yes.
I think that is such a beautiful thing.
It's like a piece of heaven.
And you mentioned a lot of the homeless have dogs as well, their only companion.
Yeah.
And we find at St Cuthbert's, we do 2 big meals a week for the homeless, working with Steps to Hope, our partner charity. And a lot of the homeless do have dogs.
Yeah.
And they come into the church, and we love that. But you mentioned that one of your favourite statues is a statue of Bum.
Yeah.
The homeless dog from San Diego.
Because we've got grey fires.
That's right. And they
We've got
said,
bum.
you've got Greyfriars, we've got Bum.
Yeah, yeah.
And we recently, as you know, we relocated Bum
Yes.
outside St Cuthbert's
yeah.
so that the homeless knew that within all these amazing statues,
There
there's a
is an
statue
animal.
for them
Yes.
as well. And that was
Because
lovely.
at Kingstables Road, it wasn't seen by the homeless people. And that's why one of the main reasons was because of the rockfall, and the second one because the homeless people couldn't see Bum. And it was so appropriate area because it's St Cuthbert's. And St Cuthbert's is a church where people come to get fed and to see it's a stray dog. And it was called Bum because he bummed around, didn't he?
He did.
So,
And you know, in the story as well, if you look closely at the Bum statue, he's missing a leg.
I noticed that,
And
yes.
he's now by a railway line, and what happened, I believe, is that he saw a stray puppy that was about to be run
Right.
over by
Oh,
a
right.
train.
Didn't know that.
He picked him up with his mouth, but in doing so, he lost his own leg as the train
so he was
severed it.
saving.
So he's all about sacrifice as well.
I didn't realise that. I wondered.
And I know you mentioned at the start this idea of sacrifice around the Garden of Remembrance.
Yes.
Could you say a wee bit about how important the Remembrance Garden is?
Well, people come and look at it, and I say you have to remember that a lot of, not just women, men, but women were sacrificing. They did the bit for the war as well. I mean, the men went and fought, and they gave up their lives, and sometimes they were about 16, 17, and they lied about their age and stuff like that, and they wanted to do the peace, the war, and to bring peace, and so we wouldn't be of the clutches of the German, like Nazis and Hitler and stuff like that. So I feel it's very strong that we have the statues of the war memorial. We have got the Falkland ones, but the Falkland one is not very obvious. That's beside the call, and it was the Sunday Post. All the readers of the Sunday Post put money into the Sunday Post paper, and we've got a little corner with a statue there and a little plaque saying it was from the readers of the Sunday Post in 1982. I'm so glad there's a bit of grass that nobody can sit on, because it's for respect for people that have died.
And I know one of your other favourite statues combines both the sense of service and sacrifice and remembrance and animals too, and that's Wojciech.
You've got Wojciech, the Polish soldier that held hand grenades, and he had never held one before, and he actually came from a Persian jungle.
And this is Wojciech the bear.
This is Wojciech the bear. And now I came upon was these Polish soldiers was in a Persian forest, and this little Persian boy had a sack, and the Polish soldier says, "What have you got in your sack?" And he says, "I've got a bear cub." He says, "Can we have a look at it?" And the wee Persian boy was absolutely starving, so the Polish soldiers gave him bully beef. You know what bully beef is?
From the tin.
Yeah, corned beef. So he exchanged the corned beef for the Polish bear.
And he served with them
So you
throughout
saved,
the Second World War.
He became their mascot.
He was a mascot, and he had his own passport. It was called Private Wojciech. If you've read the book, it's an amazing book. And normally, sometimes during the festival, they have a play about Wojciech as well. And then after the war, he lived in Edinburgh Zoo and died at the grand old age of 22.
And I heard you saying that he was quite sad towards the end, but the one thing that cheered him up was...
Yes, that's what Peter was saying, that if he heard a Polish voice or a Polish child talking in their own language, he would sort of perk up his ears and sort of stand up to attention and stuff like that.
Do you know, when we were talking, what comes into my mind in this journey we were having together, this conversation, we've now talked about homeless people, and now we've talked about the sadness of the bear not longing for home.
Yes.
And I think your garden is almost like trying to offer a place, a home. And I would also like to think maybe that's what you're trying to do with your congregation, your church, being open as a home. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a challenge to the church, to that we genuinely mean that. You know, it's all right to, in a sentimental way to say, oh, this is like a home, to think it up in your head. But, you know, I know that St Martin's in the Field down in London, when I visited there, I remember Sam Wells, the minister, telling me that the homeless people were allowed to sleep in the church. And I said, what happens when they leave a mess? He said, well, we just clean it up. He said, because we don't want people to ever think they've not got a home. Wouldn't it be great if the churches and more of us could think more about this? I know that also, you know, Josh from Lightbite, or from the...
Oh, yes,
Little John.
Josh
Little John, yeah.
It's not Lightbite, what is it? Social Bite.
Social Bite,
Social
yes.
Bite.
Rose Street, yeah.
Josh was speaking to me about a few years ago about, could we not get some of the churches to put in showers for people who are homeless, but let's not make them homeless.
Would you do that? Would you put them in the church? Or
I must jump in here, because the first thing we did in lockdown is we put a shower into St Cuthbert's for our homeless folk, and we stayed open every Sunday in lockdown.
Wow.
St Cuthbert's was allowed to stay open. Not by the Church of Scotland, they said stay shut, but the council said what you're doing for the homeless is so vital, this must keep going. And so the first thing we did, we put that shower in into the church.
Did you have people coming for showers?
Yeah. People coming for showers, and now it's just there because occasionally there will be, you know, homeless folk who would just need to, you know, freshen up, and it's so lovely to be able to offer that, and they, you know, and someone will go with them and look after them and make sure. We even put a washing machine, a tumble dryer in.
Wow.
So while they're having their meal, we can wash the clothes and give them back, you know, 45 minutes later.
Wow. So there's more information for you.
Yes, I didn't know that.
You'll now be able to direct them and say, you need a shower, there's you go. Because but this is so important, you know.
Yes, it is.
Helping people and also opening our eyes to this, what's happening in the garden. Now, the other question I wanted to ask you about...
Right, go ahead, if I can answer it.
...is the clock.
The clock, yes.
What's the history of that clock? Do you know about the history of the clock?
Yes,
Can you tell us?
It goes back to 1903, and it was Superintendent John McHattie, and he was the superintendent of the Edinburgh Council at the time, and his bright idea was to have a clock in the gardens, and it was quite a big, large thing, and so it appeared there in 1903, and it only had one hand,
right?
And in 1904. He spoke to Richie's, that has been going since 18 something or other, late 18th, that'll be the 19th century. Yeah. And they decided to put two hands on. It was one, it had an hour hand and then it had a minute hand. And then it decided part of the turret was from Ely in Fife. And then so it's just to show the public, and it's also the oldest one in the world. Now it's mechanical because it wasn't. You had to wind it up.
Yeah. Right.
And then I think it was I can't remember. Was it 19th? I can't really. I don't know the date, but it was mechanical. And the cuckoo came in 1950, and the cuckoo's every quarter of an hour and on the hour. And everybody comes to say to me, where's the cuckoo clock? Where's the Florida clock? And the first May holiday in May is put into the ground. We bring it from the Inch Nurseries, which is a council-run nursery where we get all our bedding plants. That's in the gardens from. And it takes between 4 and 8 weeks. And 3 men, or not 3 men, 3 people, because there is myself that did it once, and another female colleague, and so it takes between 4 and 8 weeks. We use echeveries, analgaves, lobelia, symphophylums, begonias, the wee ones, black grass. It's got a little purple flower. And at the top of it, we've got antirrhinums, which is snapdragons, impatience. And then the first thing the frost, we pull it out because the echives and agaves was smushy and they rot away. So, and then it goes back to nursery.
And I know your colleague Dave has been doing the clock for 40 years, and he retires this year.
Yes.
But 1 year you got to do the clock.
Yes, I got to do it. And then also, I can't remember what year we had Enable. You know, Enable is to support, is a charity for young adults with special needs, and we worked with them one-to-one when I worked in the nurseries, and that was quite a challenge because they had different disabilities, and that was quite interesting.
And I think, you just shared your passion for plants, but not just your passion for plants, but your passion for people.
Yes.
Your passion for animals. And remember, I was telling you, I thought there were 3 bits of the garden that I see. The Garden of Eden, joy, oh joy, everyone's happy. The Garden of Gethsemane, where people are struggling.
Yes.
But the most exciting one for me is the Garden of Resurrection, because that's a garden of hope for the future.
That's right.
And you probably know that the first time someone encountered Jesus Christ in the Garden of Resurrection, they thought he was a gardener.
Yes, I remember.
And I just think that's such a beautiful thing.
That's
you.
True.
That's you
true,
in your garden.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, you were telling us that you made your public profession of following Jesus when you were 23.
23,
in St James's Church.
And the minister was Callum McDougall, who is a retired minister, and he was at Edelston and what's the place? Edelston. It's going up my head.
Right.
Peoples, yes.
Yeah.
He was a minister there, and he was a good friend, and he was a neighbour as well. And I used to look after his children. And he wasn't just a minister; he was a very close friend and a good friend, and he got me through a lot of things as well, good and bad.
I think that's what all ministers should be, good friends, isn't it? I always like to be able to sign off when you're saying your friend and minister.
Yes.
There's something quite special about that, isn't there?
Because they're people as much as a minister, and they're not just, they work with God or for God and stuff like that. And,
we all do, aren't we?
Yes.
And it's we encourage one another to see that God's at work in our lives.
And I think the lovely thing about every time I meet you in the garden, we just meet as friends.
Yes, we do.
I'm in my worst clothing, you can imagine. There's no sign of the minister from St Cuthbert's there, but we just meet as friends, and it's so lovely.
But you're you, and then you have to put like a costume on for a minister, because you get all the old buddies says, what is he wearing today?
Yes. If they saw me like you see me, I'd
shake on the head and stuff like that. Yeah.
But you see the real me.
Yes. Well, I like to see the real person. Or if I can't see the real person, I says, can I help you? Like if I go into a party, I'm always in the kitchen dishing food out, and if somebody comes and says, I've got a problem, can you help me? I says, if I can help you, can I help you? You know what I mean? And so.
I wonder if we could bring the topic just back to your idea of the Garden of Resurrection, because I think that's such a powerful image to conclude our podcast on today. And because in all the podcasts there have been an interesting flow of conversation in past podcasts, and they've come to high points, but also in points where people have talked about loss and loneliness and searching, and then the lift to talk about but where do we find hope? Where do we find hope?
Yeah.
And I think what we're learning today is that if people go for a walk in the Prince's Gardens, they can indeed encounter hope.
Definitely.
And I think the lovely thing about hope is it's spontaneous.
Yeah.
If you imagine you're going to find it, you don't, I think. But if you're open to finding it anywhere or with any person or any plant or any pet, then I think you can be really surprised by hope.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah, and so as we look at plants that die but then come back again and rejuvenate and grow and continue to reproduce themselves, as Christians, of course, that's what we're called to be. People who...
Can I say, like, one of my favourite plant we've got in the garden is the witch hazel. You know what witch hazel is? It's the Latin name is the Hemimilla smallis. And then it only produces the yellow sort of tips of the flowers, and it's got this beautiful scent. It only lasts for about a month, and witch hazel is an antiseptic, so if you cut yourself and dab your knee, it brings the bruising and the cut back, and it soothes the inner bone.
Wow.
In the body and stuff like that. So I like the witch hazel, and I also like the, what's it called, the Saracocca confusula, which is it's a Christmas box and a sweet box, and it smells honey, and that's January, February when you're coming down the back of the cottage, and it's a smell. It reminds me of bees working hard and the drones dying off, and the drones protecting the queen bee to produce the honey for human people to eat.
Wow, what a lovely time to just finish our podcast on. We've had an interesting journey, haven't we, Pete?
What a beautiful conversation, and what a lovely way to spend a lunch hour.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you
Well,
so
thank
much.
you, Nicola.
Thank you for asking me, Peter.
Thank you.
My privilege and pleasure.
Thank you.
If you want to meet Nikki,
Yes.
you will find her working in the garden. And she's got to still work, so she can't just have conversation with everyone. But
Yeah.
she's been a great ambassador for the city's garden.
And I work
today.
in the West Gardens, not the East Gardens.
So it's the West Gardens. So there you go.
Yeah.
So thank you again. And
My pleasure.
It's been a real insight
Thank
into
you.
faith at the Fringe. Now, one of the things we've done at the end of every podcast
Yes.
is we have thanked everyone who looks in. So we'd like to thank you for looking into our podcast today and being part of it. And one of the things we've been doing is offering a blessing to thank you for being with us. So I'd like to just say a blessing. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may the Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace now and always. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.